program. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on caregiver resilience. We're just going to give it a minute or two and then we'll get started. So welcome here. Thanks for joining us. I am going to share my screen today and then we will talk about what it looks like to be a caregiver and to grow your resilience. We recognize that we're in a day and age where things are tough. It is challenging to grow in anything, and especially in resilience when the future is unforetold and we just don't know what's going to happen. And we've lived through 2 years of things that have been challenging. And so let me share my screen with you and we will talk about what it looks like to grow your resilience. So once again, thank you for being here with us. We're really glad that you would come, that you would join us. We want to welcome you. Thank you. You'll notice that your cameras and microphones are turned off and mine is turned on so you can see me. I can't see you, but I know that you are there. So feel free to use the chat feature, to use the question and answer feature if you feel so inclined. And we ask that you wouldn't record or take pictures of this presentation, and also recognize that this presentation is not a substitute for clinical treatment. This presentation is being recorded and we are hoping to make it available later on. So as we begin, we're just going to start with our land acknowledgement. We want to welcome all of our visiting community members. The building that I'm presenting to you from is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe. The Anishinaabe include the Ojibwe, the Adawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Catholic Family Services of Simcoe County respects Indigenous history and culture and is dedicated to moving forward in the process of reconciliation with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. So who we are, again, my name is Jenna Wickens. I am the Mature Minds Coordinator with Catholic Family Services. And at Catholic Family Services, we are an organization that is providing help, offering hope, and changing lives. We do this through two streams. We have counseling and community development. We are most well known for our walk-in service that is now called Ready to Talk. I work on the community development side and I'm grateful that I can work with different people in the community. I'm thankful that you would join us today. We know that caregiving is a journey and often your time is limited. And so thank you for taking time out of your day to come and be with us. So first, we want to ask the question, what does it mean to be resilient? You can answer this in the chat. You can just answer it to yourself if you so desire. But does it mean to have a positive, realistic outlook, have concern for others, have mission in life, have a support system, or all of the above? If you answered in your head all of the above, you would be correct. It is all of these things. It's having a positive, realistic outlook. It's having concern for others. It's having a mission in life. It's having a support system. We want you to know that hanging in there is possible. We know that it's hard, that you face things day to day, that it's hard to know what you're looking at. So what is resilience? This is the definition right here. Resilience is that ineffable quality that allows some people to be knocked down by life and come back stronger than ever. Rather than letting failure overcome them and drain the resolve, they find a way to rise from the ashes. This is a definition provided by Psychology Today. Maya Angelou is a famous poet, and you may have heard her say this before, but if not, she has said this quote, "You may not control all of the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them." And resiliency is allowing yourself to not be reduced. And so we want to practice resilience. How resilient are you? If you've just joined us, thank you. My name is Jenna Wickens, I'm the Mature Minds Coordinator, and we are talking about growing your resilience. So when I ask the question, how resilient are you? Would you say not at all? When I get knocked down, I stay down somewhat. I can sometimes face challenges and grow, and sometimes I can't. Very resilient. I know how to deal with stress and I'm constantly looking for growth opportunities. There's no wrong answer here, but you can answer this either in the chat or to yourself. But where do you feel? Do you feel like you have a hard time getting back up when you're knocked down? Do you feel like you can face challenges sometimes and grow and sometimes you can't? Or do you feel like you're very resilient? I think, honestly, that you being here means you're at least B, if not C, that you are growing your resilience, that you are wanting to grow to be stronger. I love this cartoon. This is Heart and Brain. Get up, Heart. It's not over. I will. Just give me like 5 minutes. And sometimes we feel like that, especially in caregiver journeys. We just get knocked down and we just need a minute just to stay down, to gather our thoughts, to get our passion together, and then move on. And so that we can help the people that we're caring for. Resilience is understanding that this too shall pass, even when you're faced with fiery adversity that seems to just come up against you and you're not sure how to react or interact with it. So now we're going to watch this video together. It's called Journey to Resilience.
Brains. They are everywhere. In the world's gentlest places and its harshest. In this unforgiving environment, some brains exhibit troubling signs. Addiction, illness, depression, social disorder. Yet others thrive. Why have some brains developed the ability to cope in harsh conditions while others struggle?
My apologies. Let me get that going again.
It is one of nature's great secrets.
Hi. Hello? This is amazing. But I just need to clarify a few things. This great secret? It's actually science. Severe adversity isn't good for any brain. But it is true that some brains do better than others in the face of significant challenges.
Oh, a scientist. Yes, I agree. This is a great secret of science.
Great, yes, but not a secret. Let me explain. We're born with brains, but our brains change as we grow. They develop based on experiences we have, and different brains respond to experiences in different ways. Okay, thanks. I'll let you get back to it.
Indeed. Some brains show robustity and strongitude, while others...
Sorry, we scientists use the word resilience. Some brains are more resilient than others.
Yes, resiliensis.
Resilience?
Resilience. Revenge of the cortex.
Resilience is a result of the interplay between genes and life experiences. It's a brain's ability to maintain good functioning under adversity.
Resilience makes us invincible.
Nothing makes us invincible. What resilience does is to give less leverage to negative factors in our lives and tip the balance in favor of positive outcomes.
Resilience. Fate's legendary prize.
Whoa, no! Some people are born with more resilience than others, but resilience can also be built over time. It's a big project involving parents, caregivers, teachers,
Kith, kin, karaoke comrades,
soccer coaches, counselors,
pastry chefs, associate producers, even millennials. Like a barn raising in times of old.
Yeah. In fact, we scientists believe strong brain architecture is the foundation for resilience. And, oh, look over there.
Oh, yes. A young brain returns after months of isolation and adversity. No words can describe what this poor brain has suffered.
There are words that describe it. We scientists call it toxic stress.
Toxic stress lies in wait.
No, that's not. No. Stress happens inside the body. It's the fight or flight system kicking in. But if stress hormones are elevated too high and for too long, it can have negative effects on the brain and body.
Stress, a nasty poison.
Not all stress, just toxic stress. With the right supports, we can make severe stress tolerable, which means it won't do lasting damage. Stress can even be positive because it helps us to learn problem solving and coping skills, which leads us back to resilience.
Alas, this brain is resilience-less.
No, it isn't. Let me explain. Remember when I talked about giving less leverage to negative experiences and tipping the scale in a positive direction? Well, here's a little something I've been working on. It's a really amazing metaphor. Here goes. I call it the resilience scale.
Resilience scales. Protective armor plates that
Shiny. But no. The resilience scale helps us understand why some brains are more resilient than others.
The resilience scale sends out invisible resilience rays that's
It's really just a scale. See? It's a beam being held up by a fulcrum.
full of crumbs.
Geez, no! A fulcrum. You know, like high school Never mind. Let me just clean this up. See, negative experiences add weight to one end of the beam, and positive factors add weight to the other end. Ideally, we want the scale to tip toward the positive side and lead towards positive life outcomes.
The brain's future literally hangs in the balance.
The position of the fulcrum can be understood as our original capacity for resilience. It's something like our genetic starting position. Remember the young brain that was struggling to survive? Look, it started life with the fulcrum off-center, giving more leverage to negative experiences. Serious stuff, like abuse, neglect, and chaotic environments. That means positive factors like responsive relationships, safe environments, and learning opportunities had less leverage. Over time, the negative load shifted the fulcrum even farther in a negative direction.
Tragedy.
Not at all. Right now, this brain is experiencing poor health. But with help, the scale can be tipped toward more positive outcomes. The first thing we can do is to stop negative experiences from stacking up. Then, we can add more positive factors, loading up the positive side of the scale. And we're not done. We can work to shift the fulcrum in a way that favors positive outcomes.
The fulcrum, an amazing instant fix-it button.
No, it's a process. It involves many supportive people and plenty of time. Remember? This brain is still young, so adult brains can work with it to relieve toxic stress and teach coping skills. In early childhood, these efforts can push the fulcrum a considerable distance.
Childhood, filled with fascination and fulcrum flexibility.
Sort of, but there are other sensitive developmental periods that are windows of opportunity, like adolescence. And even if this brain doesn't get help until adulthood, change is still possible. It will take more support, and the change will be less dramatic. But any fulcrum can be moved to make positive outcomes more achievable.
The bad experiences disappear. Poof.
I'm afraid not. It's hard to undo the effects of past negative experiences, and it takes time. But we can eventually relieve the burden of those negative experiences. Our little brain can get the help it needs to adapt, recover, and enjoy good health and wellness.
And everyone, everywhere can become more resilient for eternity.
Why not? With the right support, everyone everywhere can become more resilient.
I'm so glad I saved humanity. It's been a majestic experience.
Yeah, me too. Well done.
We don't know where you are in your caregiving journey. We know that it can be challenging. We know that you might be where the fulcrum is closer to the negative side and your negative experiences in your life, in your childhood, or even now as a caregiver, whether you are providing care for someone younger or someone older or a partner, that we know that those negative experiences can make you feel like you are not resilient. But part of the reason why we wanted to host this workshop for you is so that you can know that you actually can change, that things can change. You can grow your resilience. And sometimes that takes a lot of effort and work, but the outcome can be that you are stronger and able to do what is in front of you, whatever that might look like. You may have heard of this man. His name is Christopher Reeve. He played Superman for a good number of years. And he developed a disease that meant that he needed to utilize a wheelchair, that he was unable to use his limbs. They needed a lot of help and care. And what he said was, what I do is based on powers we all have inside us. The ability to endure, the ability to love, to carry on, to make the best of what we have. And we don't have to be a Superman to do it. Now, his wife, Dana Reeve, became his primary caregiver in the last years of his life. And she said, be brave, be open-minded, be kind, be forgiving, be generous, be optimistic, be grateful for the many unexpected lessons you will learn. Find the joy inside the hardship. It's there, I assure you. And 2, be open to inspiration from unlikely sources. It's hard to feel grateful when you are in a place you never thought you'd be. You may be a caregiver to a partner and you are grieving the dreams that you had together. You may be a caregiver for a child. And again, there's grief there and there's resources. Or maybe you're in a sandwich generation where you're a caregiver both for older adults and for younger people. And it's hard to see the things to be grateful when it feels like that fulcrum is tilting in the negative direction. But if we could take this advice, to be brave and open-minded, to be kind, to be forgiving, to be generous, to be optimistic, we might find that there's many unexpected lessons that we can learn. We might find that there is actually joy inside of the caregiving journey. So who is a caregiver? This role could include, but isn't limited to, caring for children, parents, grandparents, a partner, a spouse, friends, or neighbors. You may be a consistent caregiver 24/7, that there's someone in your household that you are providing care for. It could be that you are a caregiver on more of a part-time basis. You are going into homes, you're going into a long-term care environment to care for your older adult parent or older adult grandparent. But no matter how long your caregiving journey goes for, you are a caregiver. You are someone who could be a brother or a sister. You are someone who provides love and support. You are a friend and a neighbor. And often this is a great, heavy burden to bear when we care for other people, when we carry each other's burdens, when we help one another out. And so we want to give you the strength so that you can help carry those burdens a little bit easier. This is a video that was put together by Jan Arden. She is a Canadian artist who had a role as a caregiver for her mother, and she created these resources so that caregivers would be able to grow and be strengthened. Let's take a look.
We lead busy lives. We have careers, families, friends, hobbies, and often set a routine to keep our lives organized. It can be difficult to make time in our routine for self-care or personal transformation. When we do make a personal transformation, it's typically one we actively seek out because it's about how we see ourselves, alone, acting in the world. But what happens when circumstances arise that are out of our control and require us to make time to care not only for ourselves, but also for someone close to us? In the 21st century, becoming a caregiver requires us to rethink everything we once knew. When a loved one becomes a caregiver, everything changes. Responsibilities, beliefs, hopes, expectations, and relationships. Becoming a caregiver is not a role that most people think about, dream about, or even prepare for. But eventually, everyone is drafted into and transformed by the caregiver role. It's a role created by a loved one's need for care, and it infuses all aspects of our lives. Most people do not see or label themselves as caregivers at first, because it's not a desired label that is thought to promote public advancement or recognition. Caregiving is private, not public. Usually comes at a tipping point, when caring becomes a full-time job, and the quest for personal growth and personal gain become intertwined with care responsibilities. Somewhere along the care journey, disorientation takes hold, throwing caregivers off balance, requiring them to question life expectations they've taken for granted. Caregivers can't help but begin to notice a growing misalignment between their realities and the realities of their friends and family, which often leads to feelings of loneliness. This caregiver transition can make caregivers feel like strangers when what they're going through feels impossible to explain to those closest to them. For the first time, caregivers feel the limitations of their existing social support networks. Caregivers can feel like they lose parts of themselves in the care role. The next natural question the caregivers may well ask themselves are, who am I? And what have I become? When the realization dawns that real change has taken place and that there's no going back to one's pre-caregiving life, the possibility of a new life presents itself, transforming not simply who you have become, but what you value. Caregivers can begin to use and leverage their distinct voice in creating partners, allies, and social ties to deepen advocacy efforts to become stakeholders, not only in their own loved one's ongoing journey, but also in their own. Becoming a caregiver isn't just something that happens to us. It's a life-altering role and relationship that provides the opportunity to transform our experiences to enhance individual and familial well-being. It's an opportunity to discover new ways of seeing ourselves and being with others.
And so this is the reality of your caregiving journey. Is it hard? Yes, absolutely. We don't deny that. It is challenging to care for other people. Can it be transformative for you and the person that you're caring for? Absolutely. It can. We can come to a place where we recognize that life has changed and we can embrace some of those changes. And it takes strength. It takes resilience in order to do that. So your caregiver role, are you being a caregiver? Who are you being a caregiver for right now? You can answer this again, just in your head or in the chat. You are a caregiver for your dependents, a caregiver for your parents, caregiver for your partner, caregiver for your partner's parents, caregiver for your grandparents or for your friends or for your neighbors, or you're not currently a caregiver. So you feel free to type that in the chat of what you are a caregiver, who you are a caregiver for. For a lot of people, it's a combination of roles. A caregiver for children and parents, the sandwich generation that we find ourselves in. A caregiver for neighbors, a caregiver for friends at different points. Sometimes our caregiving journey can extend and be a permanent thing. Sometimes it is temporary, but all of us will be a caregiver at some point if you are not already. I love this. It says, this is my weekly grocery list. Coffee, more coffee. Try not to scream at anybody this time. I should get a coffee on the way there, bread. And isn't that the way that our brains go? It's like, oh, if only I could be better at this time. And we can either in that moment guilt ourselves, or we can realize that we all make mistakes and we can choose to grow. What's your frequency of your role? How often do you act as a caregiver? All the time, multiple times a day, once a day, multiple times a week or once a week, multiple times a month, once a month, multiple times a year, once a year, it doesn't apply. And you might look at this list and be like, oh, that's overwhelming even to think about. But the idea is, are you a caregiver all the time, some of the time, part-time? And you might be a caregiver in one role 24/7 and a caregiver in another role a couple times a week. Maybe you're a grandparent who's taking care of their partner and their grandchildren. We see multiple generations living today because we have a greater life expectancy, which is a medical marvel. But sometimes it means that our caregiving can stretch us in a lot of different directions. I love this too. When you just want to sleep, but you're a caregiver. Parents of young children know this. There's no rest. Or if you're a caregiver and your care partner is up in the middle of the night and you have to get up with them, you need to care for them, and it can feel like there is no rest available for you. And so when there's no rest, we need to draw on inner resources and inner strengths. Why did we decide that we wanted to run a workshop on caregiver resilience? Well, we've actually run this workshop once before. We did it in partnership with Share Life, and we recognize that there's limited supports available, and we wanted to help provide resources for caregivers. There's these statistics about caregivers. This is by MediPen. So this is out of the States, but a lot of the time statistics in the States apply to us in Canada and apply around the world. The primary age of primary caregivers is 30 to 64 years old. 20% are college graduates, 16% post-grads, 4% have less than high school, 37% have college or technical training, and 23% are high school graduates. And what that means is we have a spread of demographics across education, that being a caregiver is something that you might have as part of your role, no matter what your age in schooling is. A lot of caregiving, 66% is unpaid. And as that video from Jan Arden said, a lot of it is invisible. People don't see you. You're not getting clapped on the back. It's not like when you go to work and have people say, wow, you're doing a great job. You're caregiving for someone who may never show gratitude for what you're doing. We also recognize this, that between men and women, or people who identify as men and people who identify as women, 61.7% are full-time caregivers, who are those who identify as women. And almost half of everyone who is a caregiver also have other jobs. There's so many responsibilities, so many things that you have to think about. And sometimes it's hard to think about yourself in that, of how do you grow your resilience? How do you take care of yourself while you're caring for other people? Now, these are Canadian statistics in 2018. And we know that with the pandemic, these statistics have increased dramatically. The pandemic has shown us that more people have become caregivers and what that looks like. In Canada, the majority of caregivers are represented by people who identify as women. 1 in 4 people in Canada provide care or help for a family member. That's a lot. And close to half of caregivers primarily care for a parent or a parent-in-law. Most caregivers provide at least 1 to 3 hours of care a week. This is a lot. The amount that you are contributing to society by caring for your loved ones. It may not seem like anyone notices, but we notice, we see, we recognize that you are doing important work. And a lot of people are doing this work and it often goes unnoticed. Caregiver stress, no. Why do you ask? I felt this during the pandemic. I had times that I was caring for my parents, and just the things that would amalgamate, that would come together, the stresses of finance and the stresses of COVID, the pandemic, and the stress of just life. And then you're caring for someone and you just feel a little bit like you're drowning. And we want you to know that even in those times that you feel like you're drowning, that there's strength available, that you can draw on resources and build your resilience. We need to grow the muscles that help us face these challenges head on and come out to the other side, not just surviving, but thriving. Caregiving and resilience are both muscles that we can build. I went walking this summer with my mom and with a good friend of ours. We walked across PEI, and while I was walking with them, we walked about 60 kilometers over the span of a week. And the thing is that the more we walked, the more comfortable we were walking. It was muscles that were growing. And so people who run marathons train for those marathons because they know that they need to build muscles. They need to build strength in order to complete the race that they are on. And you, as a caregiver, need to build your muscles of resilience so that you can complete the race that you are set on. Caregiver burnout is real, and we're going to talk about that. Have you ever had that feeling like, I just can't today? I can't get out of bed today. I can't do the thing that I need to do. I can't care for myself, let alone anyone else. And this cartoon says, I don't sweat the small stuff. Instead, I lump it all together with big and medium things so I can have a major breakdown instead. Emotions are real, and you will deal with a variety of emotions. But we want you to know that you're not alone, and that you can work through the small stuff. You don't have to sweat the small stuff because you have so many big things in front of you. We're going to help you grow those muscles. 98% of individuals receiving long-term home care have an unpaid caregiver. 96%. More than 1 in 3 of these caregivers are in distress. Caregiver burnout is real. So we're just going to look at this video together.
Being a caregiver can bring out all kinds of emotions. One day it may be rewarding and fun, while the next it might be stressful and draining. It's a demanding job, and sometimes caregivers get so wrapped up in their duties that they start to neglect their own health and well-being. In this video, we'll teach you how to recognize some of the signs of caregiver burnout and give you a few tips on what you can do to prevent it. On the best days, caregiving is empowering. It brings you closer to the person you're caring for and provides you with a sense of purpose and inner strength. However, it's just as likely that being a caregiver will cause you to experience negative feelings. You might even feel several emotions at once. Scared about the future, angry about your situation, frustrated about your limitations, and anxious about all the things you need to do. The good news is, these feelings are all perfectly normal. The important thing is to recognize when they're happening and deal with them appropriately before they lead to a bigger problem, like caregiver burnout. So how can you tell whether what you're feeling is burnout or just normal exhaustion? Here are some of the symptoms to look for. You feel a strong urge to run and hide from your responsibility. Your activity becomes scattered and frantic. You often feel angry and irritable. You have a hard time concentrating and can't read more than 3 sentences at a time without losing focus. You often lose track of important details. You sleep less than 3 hours at a time or lose more than 10 pounds. Everyone gets exhausted once in a while, but it's the intensity and frequency of these symptoms that separates a normal reaction from burnout. If any of these symptoms describe how you feel most of the time, you should seek help from your family doctor as soon as possible. The best way to prevent burnout is to deal with your emotions as they come up. If you start to feel stressed, angry, guilty, or depressed, take a moment to stop and think about why you're feeling this way. Acknowledge the source and try to move past it. Open yourself up to creating a give-and-take relationship with the person you're caring for. They may have as much to offer you as you have to offer them. You're both in this situation together, trying to do the best you can with the knowledge and skills you have. Don't expect the person you're caring for to change their entire personality, but aim to find some common ground and work as a team. If you start to feel overwhelmed, try using one of the following techniques to help calm yourself down and ground you. Take a couple of long, deep breaths, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Count slowly down from 10. Trace your eyes along a vertical line from the ceiling to the floor, breathing out while you do so. Put on music by one of your favorite artists. Get some exercise. Any physical activity can help, whether it's stretching, playing sports, or just going for a brisk walk around the block. If you think you're starting to feel burned out, don't be afraid to ask for help. Isolating yourself when things get tough will only make your negative emotions get worse. Your friends and family want to help, but they won't know you need it unless you ask. You can't expect to provide proper care for someone else if you don't also take care of yourself. Being able to recognize the signs of caregiver burnout will help you take steps to avoid it and allow you to provide the best care possible on both the good days and bad. Be sure to subscribe and watch.
So caregiver burnout, it's good to recognize the signs. And if you are feeling those symptoms that were addressed, it's good to get additional help. We all need help sometimes. And so whether that's a counselor or talking to a friend or family member or whatever they may look like for you, if you're experiencing these things on an ongoing basis, you need to figure out how to get help for yourself so that you can help the people who need help from you. If you're on an airplane, they always tell you that when the airplane is going down, if the airplane goes down, that you need to put on your own oxygen mask before you put on someone else's. The reason why they tell us that is because our natural bent is to help the other person before helping ourselves. And if you're a caregiver, you've had this role thrust upon you that you have to choose to help yourself and make those minutes happen and breathe in and out. And it seems funny that we need to remind ourselves to breathe, but we have to remind ourselves to breathe because when things start feeling like they're out of control, we often forget to do that. So here are some signs of caregiver burnout: that you are easily flustered or frustrated. You're feeling forgetful or foggy. It's like you have so many tabs open that you just can't even sort through the tabs in your brain. You're extremely tired, quick to anger, feeling anxious or depressed, uninterested in things that used to bring you joy, or you might be feeling hopeless or helpless. So when you are lacking resilience, when you feel like I just can't go on, which sign of burnout shows up in your life most frequently? You can recognize this in yourself. I know for me, when I'm feeling burnt out just in life or burnt out from caring for other people, often that comes out in me as being easily flustered or frustrated, that my patience levels become lower. And so when you can recognize these things in yourself, it's helpful because then you know where to go to get help. In this cartoon, it says he appears to lost all of his resilience. There's no structure, there's no muscle, he's just flopping on the couch and that's all you got. And if you feel like all you have left in you is just to flop on a chair, you might just need to take time to breathe, to be there. So now that we've looked at resilience and what that means and looked at who a caregiver is and why we need to establish caregiver resilience, we're going to look at how you can grow your resilience because it is a muscle. It's a muscle that you can make stronger by practicing certain habits. And if you do something long enough, it becomes a habit and then it becomes part of who you are. Psychologists have identified some of the factors that appear to make a person more resilient, such as a positive attitude, optimism, the ability to regulate emotions, the ability to see failure as a form of helpful feedback. I got a sweater recently that says failure isn't final. If you fail in your caregiving, if you fail in your ability to be patient or gracious, it's not final, it's helpful feedback. Because you can ask yourself, why did I interact that way? Why did I live this way? Why did I speak that way? What was I feeling in the moment? And you can change it. You can grow. Helen Keller was born without the ability to see or the ability to hear. And as a result, it affected her ability to speak. She said, I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. I will not refuse to do something I can do. You may be only one, but you still are one. To the person you're caring for, to the people you are caring for, you are doing something that is changing their lives. And they may never recognize it. They may never see it and thank you, whether it's a kid or an adult, an older adult. They may complain about your caregiving, but you can know that you are doing something that is changing them and changing you. Helen Keller also said, character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, vision cleared, ambition inspired, and success achieved. Helen Keller's teacher taught her how to communicate. There was struggle, there was failure. If you've seen the movie of When That Happens, they made a documentary on this. Well, not a documentary, a docudrama. And they look at all the different ways that they had to fail, the ways that Helen Keller pushed back. She didn't want to learn. She didn't want to be cared for. But when she felt that she could communicate, there was nothing that could stop her. And she is one to speak on what it means to grow in the midst of trial and suffering. So we are going to look now at ways to build resilience, an acronym called Resilience Saves, and then we're going to look at some animal examples of resilience. 3 ways for you to build resilience, even starting today. Focus on your strengths. Have you ever written down a list of just things that you are strong at? Maybe even 3 things that you could write down and put on your mirror or put on your fridge and remind yourself, I am someone who can look at the positive side. I am someone who sticks it out. Whatever it might be, you can write that down. Also, another way to grow resilience, know what you need. Know what you need. Do you need a minute to take a breath when your caregiving partner is just being very frustrating to you? Do you need a day that you can go out and get some shopping done? Do you need an hour to go do something else? Do you need to be reminded of the joys that you have? Do you need time to grieve the things that you've lost in your relationship? The third way to build resilience is to take care of yourself. If you can focus on your strengths, know what you need, and actually take care of yourself, you're going to find yourself all the stronger. This is a matter of saying, I have, I will, I can, I am. I have these resources. I will utilize these things to take care of myself. I can do this. I can care for the person who is, I am caring for them. Even when it's difficult, I can. I'm going to find the resources, and I am. I am someone who cares. I am a caregiver. I am caring for someone else in a way that honors them and honors me. Resilience is a muscle that you need to grow. So with practice and with training, that as we exercise our ability to be resilient, we can grow those muscles. We can become not just better caregivers, better people. And some of this happens through self-care. Again, I get it. Caregiving is a journey. It's a process, and it's a time that you don't have a lot of time to yourself. But if you can make a practice of self-care, you're going to find that your caregiver journey is all the more strengthened because you're caring for yourself. Self-care refers to our ability to function effectively while meeting the challenges of daily living with a sense of vitality, energy, and confidence. The term implies that we are active participants in the process. Growing resilience doesn't happen apart from us. We need to actually work at it. We need to be people who decide that we want to become more resilient. You need to take care of yourself. I am terrible at keeping planted things alive. Someone gave me a potted plant a month ago, and I either squish them or I put not enough or too much water in them. There's a practice to it. There are people who are naturally better at keeping things alive, at caring for plants, and others who need to work on it, but it is a muscle that you can grow. You can strengthen your understanding in what it means to care for yourself and care for other people. We just want to look at some myths about self-care, because I know even as I'm saying these words, some of you are thinking, self-care, oh, I don't know about that. Well, first, know this. The myth is that self-care is an indulgence, that really you're being indulgent if you are taking care of yourself. And that's not true. Meaningful self-care includes making mindful changes in patterns of thoughts and behaviors that do not contribute to your well-being. It's not indulgent, it is necessary. Another myth is that self-care is selfish. When you make time for yourself and get sufficient rest and energy, the reality is that you feel more energetic and you'll be able to do more for yourself as well as for those around you. Self-care is not selfish. That's one that I hear over and over again. I just feel like I'm being so selfish when I need to take 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes. It's going to give you more energy and help you to care for people around you. Another myth is that self-care is a one-time experience. But the reality is that looking after yourself is an ongoing practice. It's not one time, but it's ongoing, day after day. It's the small choices that make changes. This is how you build resilience to face hardships and to prevent burnout, to avoid burnout. The last one is that self-care is time-consuming. This is a myth. Some people think that the only way you can truly have self-care is if you can go away on a holiday for a weekend. Some of you don't have time for that. Some of you don't have the resources to do that. But self-care doesn't have to be time-consuming. You don't need to take a huge chunk out of your busy day. You could take a minute. You could go write yourself a message, put it on the mirror in your bathroom, and every time you go, read that message and remind yourself of the characteristics that you have. It isn't selfish. Once again, I just want to reiterate that because it is something that I hear often. People believe that self-care is selfish. It is not. You need to be able to care for yourself so that you can care well for other people. This is an essential attribute. We all need self-care in different ways. So intentionally prioritizing and integrating self-care in your daily habits can help you navigate challenges, but it has to become a daily thing. And you might look and think, oh, I don't know how I'm going to fit this in. Start with 2 minutes, expand that out to 5 minutes, maybe give yourself 10 minutes and work your way up. Let this be a muscle that you build. Sometimes we might need additional strategies. You might need something else that will help you with self-care because self-care can feel overwhelming when you're not even sure what you need. Here are some types of self-care that you might look into. There's physical self-care. This includes working out. It can include just sleep, like taking a nap. It can include nutrition and all those different things. You might need emotional self-care. This is stress management and coping skills, compassion and therapy and journaling, and writing down what you feel and why you feel it, writing down your grief, writing down your burdens, writing down the things. Sometimes you may want to write something and then just burn it or throw it out, that you just need to get your emotions out, but you don't want to leave it there for someone else to read. And that's good too. Social self-care is boundaries. Boundaries are self-care. Boundaries on your time, boundaries even with your caregiving partner, that you set up boundaries and say, look, in these 5 minutes, I need to have boundaries here. Boundaries when other people are asking you to help them and you are tapped out and cannot. A boundary is giving yourself permission to say no. And doing that and saying no to some things, it frees you up to say yes to the better things and the best things. Sometimes you need to say no to a good thing in order to say yes to the best. You also get a social support system is in social self-care. It's like your friends, your family, people you can rely on. Positive social media. Social media can be a drain. And even social media that appears positive, because you can look at other people's caregiver journeys and think, man, they are a better friend, partner, child, parent than I am. And if that's your thought process, I would just say back off of social media for a bit. But if you're finding social media to support you, that's letting you know that you're not alone, then engage in social media. There's also spiritual self-care and time alone and prayer and meditation in nature and in sacred spaces. And oftentimes you'll find social self-care tied in with spiritual self-care. Personal self-care is about your hobbies and your creativity. When's the last time you did something just because you like to do it? Not because you're trying to have a side hustle and earn some extra cash, but you just did something for the sake of doing it. When's the last time that you played, that you had fun? Fit that in 5 minutes. Maybe it's coloring. You just need to color for 5 minutes for no reason other than to give yourself self-care. Space can be self-care when you create a space in your home that has safety, that you have a healthy environment, stability, and a clean space. If you're feeling burnt out, sometimes the best thing that you can do is the dishes, to get the dishes off the counter, because it's one thing that you can check off a list. When I'm feeling especially burnt out, I like to make myself a list of to-do, but just a small list so that I can check it off at the end of the day and feel like I've accomplished something. Financial self-care is when you save and budget, when you're managing your money so that your finances don't add to your stress. You can create an Excel spreadsheet or just write a list, but that you know what you're spending your money on. And work can also be self-care. When you feel like you're providing purposeful work, volunteering, taking care of yourself, taking care of other people. And in work, your self-care can include time management and work boundaries. That if you are working to a certain time, that you stop working after that time and just be with the people that you're with. This is an emergency self-care plan, just as an idea, because there are times that you don't even know what you need in a moment. And so if you can, when you're in a good place on a good day, write this down for yourself, then this will help you on the days that you're not sure what you need. So what do I need right now? Do you need to call someone? Do you need to talk to a friend or ask someone for help? You just write this down so then you can skim it on your fridge or on a mirror, on a place that you can look at it, and have self-care activities that you could do, like a 5-minute meditation or coloring or taking a nap or going for a walk. This is basically giving you a drop-down list of activities that you point to and say, these are things that I need to remember, that when I'm the most stressed and feeling the most burnt out, I am not going to remember them. That you might need different apps or coloring books or an eye mask or what you need in order to accomplish these things. Create yourself an emergency self-care plan and maybe even an emergency self-care kit. Put some crayons in it and a coloring book, put a mask in it, put a list of things you need to remember about breathing deeply, reminding yourself that you are worthy, that even if today feels like a failure, failure is not final. Failure isn't final, and tomorrow is a new day. Martin Luther King said, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. There's an acronym to help us remember tools that help build resilience. And that acronym is SAVES. You will grow your resilience as a caregiver and as an individual if you have social connection, if you have the right attitude, if you know your values, if you recognize your emotions, and if you practice silliness. The last one seems silly, that you would practice silliness in order to grow resilience. But if you can laugh at life, you're going to find that your laughter increases your own dopamine and it allows you to face life with a sense of humor. We're going to look more in depth at each one of these characteristics of resilience saves. The social aspect. We are made for connection. We're made for community. We need people. We actually need people so much that it affects the chemical balances of our brain. Basic human connections like a hug can release oxytocin, which is linked to warm, fuzzy feelings, and that can lower your stress and anxiety. Do you know that if you're kind to someone, it actually makes you feel better? If you're going through and grabbing a coffee at Tim's or Starbucks and you pay for the person behind you, you're actually giving yourself dopamine. You're actually making yourself happy, and you may never interact with them. The challenge sometimes, especially as caregivers, is when we expect reaction to our kindness. You're being kind to your caregiving partner, kind to your child or your parent or your grandparent, and they respond with anger. What do you do then? Well, your happiness cannot be dependent on their responses. Your happiness has to be dependent on the resilience inside you and the way that you view life, regardless of how other people interact. This is a sheep. It says, whoa, Jeff, you snagged your sweater. And sometimes it acts as a reminder that sometimes we need people to unwind with, and sometimes we need someone else to let us know that we are becoming unraveled. The second part of that resilience saves is attitude. Remind yourself of permanence. Know that this will pass. It might pass in a few days. It might pass in a few weeks. It might be months or years, but it will pass. The argument that you're having with your caregiver partner on the caregiving journey, it will pass. The feelings of failure that you have will pass. Don't take it personally. This is one of the biggest things. You can't take it personally. When someone that you are caring for is not themselves because of whatever they are facing, and they interact with you in a way that was not the person that you married, or not the child that you once knew, or not the parent who raised you, you can't take it personally. You have to look for the bigger picture. and focus on the positive. See what good you can see when you can see it. Make a note of it, write it down, maybe create a gratitude journal where you write down 3 things you're thankful for that day. And maybe those things have to do with your caregiving partner. Maybe they just have to do with, today I woke up and I didn't feel so tired. And you can write that down and remind yourself. Part of attitude is looking at a picture and deciding what you can do. It's easy to focus on what you can't. It's easy to see all the things that aren't the way that you thought they would be, but you can choose to decide what you can do. And this doesn't mean that you have to do all of the things, but it means that you can do some of the things, and starting with self-care. This is an African violet. I don't know if you've seen this before. They are beautiful flowers. There is a story, the psychologist Erickson, he was asked to go visit someone's aunt. He was told she was alone and her life didn't seem to be going anywhere. She was an older adult, but in that time frame, older, in our time frame, an older adult can be anywhere from 50 to 120. She was living on her own and she didn't have a lot of resources or help, but she had a lot of money. Erickson showed up to the aunt's place and once immediately recognized that it was dark and gloomy. All the windows were closed. She had little interaction with people. She had someone who came in and cleaned, and she had someone who would drive her places and was also like her engineer, janitor, the person who made sure that the house was maintained and fixed up. But all the windows were closed. He said to her, you need to take me on a tour of your house. And so she did, and brought him from room to room. And in each room, it was dark and enclosed. And each room just seemed like there wasn't a lot of life in it. And the woman was feeling very much burnt out and depressed and just no social interaction until they came to one room. In this one room, it was bright and brilliant. There was light everywhere. And there was these beautiful African violets sitting on the shelf, just stunning. And Erickson asked the woman about the violets, and she said proudly, "Oh, I've grown these myself and I love them," and all these things. Now, this woman said that she was someone of faith, that she was someone who had belief, and that was foundational for her life. And Erickson responded to that and said, "I've discovered what the problem is here. After seeing all the flowers, that I've discovered what the problem is here. I've discovered you're actually just a bad Christian." And no matter what your faith base is or whether you have no faith base, what he was saying is, you have all this finances and resources and you're just keeping it to yourself. And so the diagnosis that he gave her, and then the suggestion that he gave her, he said, "This is what I want you to do. I want you to take those African violets. I want you to send out your cleaner and get them to get a ton of potting soil and get 200 gifting pots. And I want you to replant them and grow African violets. And I want every time there's someone in your faith community who has a child, give them an African violet. If they get engaged, give them an African violet. If someone dies, give their family an African violet. If someone graduates, give them an African violet. I just want you to give them this. And you're going to get your driver to take you to give them, and you'll give them words of condolences and words of affirmation depending on what they need, but you'll give them African violets. This is what I'm prescribing for you." Years later, Erickson is teaching a class and he holds up a newspaper article and it says, "African violet queen dies surrounded by friends and family." And the students asked him, "Why did you ask her to give away African violets? Why didn't you treat her depression?" And Erickson said, "Oftentimes it is better for us if we can look at what we can do instead of what we can't." And what that woman could do is she could gift African violets to other people. She could make a change by giving something to someone else. And she made it so foundational in her life to be kind, to look out for others, that her life changed. She became surrounded by friends and family just by taking the little thing that she had on the shelf and by multiplying it and giving it away. And I don't know what you have on your shelf. I know that you likely have a lot of things on your hands as a caregiver, but there might be something in your life that if you can focus on what you can do, then again, you're going to change the lives of the people you're caring for and your own life. The next one in resilience saves is values. What matters most to you? What do you value? I don't mean that jewel or that painting. I mean characteristic values. Do you value patience? Do you value grace? Do you value people feeling cared for? What do you value? Values give purpose and meaning to everything we do. Acting in line with our values builds resilience. When we have values, when we determine our values, if you're not sure, you can get values assessments online for free that will help you determine what it is that you value. You can write these things down, because the reality is that when we act in line with our values, it builds resilience. But when we act opposed to our values, that's when it builds stress and burnout. Elvis Presley said, values are like fingerprints. Nobody's are the same, but you leave them all over everything you do. The way that you interact with people, the way that you live and work and breathe demonstrates what you value. You can use purpose as an anchor. If you know what you value, if you find meaning and purpose in these different things, then it can be an anchor for you when you face the storms that caregiving brings. The next letter in the SAVES acronym is emotions. To know what's going inside you at this moment, just watch it. Don't analyze it. Don't try and figure out why or what or where it's coming from. Just watch it. What are you feeling? Look at this feeling. Observe the feeling. Do you feel calm? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel joyful? Do you feel sad or angry? Observe your own feelings. Name your emotions. These emotions are a gift. We often think of our negative emotions or perceived negative emotions as something to overcome, but it is an opportunity to see and to grow. It's an opportunity to view our circumstances through a realistic lens while approaching our emotions with curiosity. Curiosity did not actually kill the cat. Curiosity is what allows us to grow. Curiosity allows us to expand how we give care, how we receive care, what that looks like. Ask yourself, why do I feel this way? What's the root of my emotions? So first you observe your emotion and say, what is this emotion? And then you ask yourself, why? And that way you can know what brought it up, what's making you feel less patient or more frustrated or angry. Oftentimes we use the word anger to cover a multitude of different emotions, when really you might be disappointed or frustrated or hurt. A lot of different things may come up in what you're feeling. Here's a feelings vocabulary for you, just a list of different emotions. We might be afraid or amused or angry or annoyed or appalled or astonished. Those are a lot of different emotions here in this little grouping that we might feel, but often we just name a couple of big ones. I feel sad, I feel angry, maybe you're just hungry. But all of these different emotions have different things attached. And so we need to recognize our emotions so we know how to engage with them. Now, this last one, again, you might look at this and say, I'm fine with resilience and save. But this S, I don't know about that. Maybe you're not naturally a silly person, but if you can get into the habit of practicing silliness, of growing your silly muscles, you're going to find yourself in a place that grows your resilience too. Don't take yourself so seriously. Remember to laugh, take time to play, and having a lighthearted approach to life and to your caregiving journey can take the weight off and lets you enjoy your care receiver. Because let's be honest, all of us do silly things all of the time. But if we can actually enjoy that and recognize that, it's not going to be every moment that you're going to be able to play and laugh and be silly. But grab hold of those moments, recognize them for what they are. Caregiver moment number 12, arguing for 30 minutes to get your loved one to wear matching socks, then realizing you went out with your own shirt on backwards, because this happens, we know that it does. As we move from here, we're going to look at some animal examples of resilient creatures. There's lots of different creatures and characters who show resilience, but sometimes in order for us to see a bigger picture, we need to look small. in order for us to see how we can grow resilience, we need to get examples of creatures around us that are much smaller. We're going to look at two specifically and glean what we can from their examples. This is one of my favorites. I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not. It is called a tardigrade. A tardigrade is known as a water bear because of its bear-like claws. It's the most resilient creature that we know about. It is small but mighty. Tiny little creature. This is at 1 millimeter or less in size. They're small but mighty. They can survive in extreme temperatures and are the first creatures to survive in space. And I don't mean that they give them little astronaut helmets that are 1 millimeter big, that they actually just put them straight out in space and they were able to survive. Tardigrades, that no matter what's thrown at them, they can find a way to make it through. They find the resources they need, even when resources are lacking. Tardigrades can survive off of 1 molecule of water and with no water at all for over 100 years. They dehydrate, become still, and wait until more resources are available. This is what I want you to take from the tardigrade. You have it within you to search for resources, to find what you need. You on your caregiving journey have survived with minimal resources available to you. You have survived in the past. You are here today. You can look to what you've done in the past to see how you will survive in the future. You are an advocate for your caregiving partner and an advocate for yourself. You are someone who, by being here today, are gathering resources that you can use. And even when those resources are limited, you know how to survive. You can become tardigrade tough. You can become like this little water bear, able to face what's coming at you, knowing that what you're made of allows you to be resilient. The next small creature we're going to look at are fire ants. These things are incredible. Not something that I'd ever want to come in contact with because they burn and bite, but they are amazing. They can carry 3 times the amount of their weight and survive underwater for 24 hours. The true source of their strength comes from their social bonds. They're social creatures. They need to be part of a colony to survive. And so for you, if you get nothing else from this, find a friend that you can share the burden with. Find people who you know that you're not alone with. Social integration, social building, social connection is what allows us to have strength and grow resilience. So if we consider the South American fire ants, these little creatures live in an area that experience frequent flooding. And when the waters rise, they prove how buoyant, see what I did there? They are, and how resilient. This is what they do. So when you're drowning, the last thing that you want to do is for others to cling to you, or so it seems, but for the fire ants, clinging to one another is how they survive. They create a raft with their own bodies that can accommodate thousands to millions of passengers with no casualties. As the raft grows, they rotate their position so that no ant is left underwater for too long. All of them drown in moments, but none of them completely drown because they cling to one another. So how do you find your way in all of this? You can feel like as a caregiver, you're up against a wall. And so when your own resilience wanes and you still need to care for other people's, I hope that this philosophy would remind you and bolster you, give you courage and help you find a way to the other side. That you would think about the tardigrade and the fire ants, that you would remember that you can have social connections, that you have control over your attitude. You can't change how other people interact, that there's always a way over or under or around or through.
Hello there, everybody. Today I'm going to teach you a whole bunch of things, so you look and listen closely. Okay, here goes. Around, 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 over, and under, and through. That's what I'm teaching. Around, 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 over, and under, and through. You see? Now watch.
just adding a little bit to our silliness of the day, that reminder that no matter what you are facing, no matter how tough it feels on your caregiving journey, that there is a way over and under and around and through, that you have demonstrated strength in the past and you will demonstrate strength in the future. You are worth caring for. You are worth growing your own resilience. You are someone who is resilient. And you can grow that muscle more and more. So in closing, if you have any questions, you can add those to the Q&A box. We wanted to thank you for your time with us. And if you need help finding resources for your caregiver journey, you can send me an email. Or if you want to let me know how you've grown your own resilience, tell me. You can email me at jwickens@cfssc.ca. Just a couple final closing thoughts. There's a poem that says, resilience is silent and deep. Like roots, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't explode outward. It doesn't fall. It doesn't break. It simply always is. And you are resilient. You are, though your resilience may feel silent and deep, it is like roots, and roots can grow into trees that provide life-giving fruit for other people. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're so glad that you could be with us. We're so glad that we could be together. As I said, if you need any other resources for your caregiving journey, even in the loops that come the road, when you're figuring out where you're at, where you look at now this is the path that I'm on and it's different than what you thought, then please feel free to send me an email. I'll put that in the chat box and then we will close ourselves out for the day. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks for being here with us. And may you go on your caregiving journey, growing resilience. Have a great day.